Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Self-Made Man. Mason Reynolds wiped the grease from his hands with a stained rag, his muscles aching from hours bent over the engine of a '67 Mustang. The auto repair shop's radio crackled with Detroit Tigers game commentary, mixing with the rhythmic clanking of tools and hum of machinery. "Kid, you're going to work yourself into the ground," Mike, the shop supervisor, called out from beneath a lifted Chevy. "It's past closing time. Just finishing up Mrs. Garcia's timing belt," Mason replied, double-checking his work. At 16, he'd already earned a reputation for thoroughness that brought regular customers to Lloyd's Auto Repair. The shop door chimed. "Dad, I brought dinner." Lisa Lloyd's voice rang through the garage. Mason glanced up to see the owner's daughter carrying takeout bags, her college sweatshirt bearing the University of Michigan logo. "Perfect timing, sweetheart." "Let me just—" James Lloyd's response was cut short by the sound of breaking glass. Two masked figures burst through the side entrance, one brandishing a gun. "Nobody move!" the taller one shouted, grabbing Lisa's arm. "Keys to the blue BMW out front. Now!" Mason's body moved before his mind could process the danger. He lunged forward, tackling the armed man. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Lisa screamed and broke free, running toward her father. Pain exploded in Mason's shoulder as they crashed into a tool cabinet. Tools rained down around them as they grappled on the concrete floor. The second attacker tried to pull Mason off, but Mike had already triggered the emergency alarm. "Police are coming!" James Lloyd's voice boomed through the garage. The attackers panicked, the armed one shoving Mason hard against the cabinet before they fled. Mason tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. Warm blood soaked his work shirt, and the room started to blur. "Mason, stay with me, son." James knelt beside him, pressing a clean shop towel against the wound. "Lisa, call an ambulance." "I'm okay," Mason mumbled, though the pain suggested otherwise. "Lisa, she okay?" "I'm here." Lisa's tear-streaked face appeared above him. "You saved my life, you idiot." The next 3 weeks in the hospital gave Mason plenty of time to question his impulsive heroics. His father visited between shifts, pride and worry battling in his tired eyes. The shop's other mechanics rotated through, bringing magazines and updates about their regular customers. James Lloyd came every day, often staying for hours with his laptop open, working while Mason slept. On the day before Mason's release, he closed the laptop and cleared his throat. "I've been watching you work for 2 years now," James began. "You've got something special, Mason. Not just with cars. You see patterns, solve problems. Ever thought about programming?" Mason shifted in the hospital bed. "Like computers?" "Never had much chance to learn. I worked as a software engineer for 30 years before buying the shop," James revealed. "These days, cars are rolling computers. Someone who understands both sides. That's valuable." "Mr. Lloyd, I appreciate it, but I need to work." "My family." "You'll still work at the shop," James interrupted. "But 3 nights a week, you'll learn programming from me. No charge. Consider it an investment in both our futures." That conversation changed the trajectory of Mason's life. James became more than a boss. He became a mentor, teaching Mason the fundamentals of coding after hours in the shop's small office. Mason absorbed everything, often coding late into the night at home on a refurbished laptop James gave him. Life had other plans. 2 months after Mason's 18th birthday, his father collapsed at work. The stroke left him partially paralyzed, unable to work any of his 3 jobs. Mason's mother took extra shifts at the diner, but it wasn't enough. "You should focus on school," his father protested weakly from his hospital bed. "You're programming." "I'm not giving that up," Mason assured him. "But family comes first. You taught me that." He took over as head mechanic at Lloyd's, working longer hours while continuing his evening programming sessions with James. They began developing software to streamline automotive diagnostics, combining Mason's practical experience with James's coding expertise. This could revolutionize how shops operate, James explained one night, reviewing their code. Most diagnostic software is either too complex or too simple. We're building something that actually thinks like a mechanic. Their prototype caught the attention of a major automotive software company. Negotiations stretched over months, with James handling the business side, while Mason refined the software. The final offer came in, $8 million. "We did it, kid," James said, his voice rough with emotion as they prepared to sign the contracts. "I always knew you had it in you." That night, James suffered a massive heart attack. By the time Mason reached the hospital, he was gone. The nurses gave him a sealed envelope, James's last letter. Mason sat in his car, hands shaking as he opened it. "Dear Mason, if you're reading this, I guess the timing wasn't on my side. Don't you dare feel guilty. These have been the best years of my retirement, watching you grow into the man you've become. I've updated my will. My share of the software sale goes to you, with one condition. Make it count, son. Not just the money, make your life count. You've got the brains and the heart to do amazing things. Lisa will handle the shop. She's got her mother's business sense. You need to spread your wings now. Just remember where you came from, and never forget that success isn't about the money. It's about what you do with it. Proud of you, son." James. The Detroit Charity Foundation's annual gala wasn't Mason's typical scene. He tugged at his bow tie, feeling out of place among the city's elite. But James's letter had been clear, make it count, and the foundation's youth education programs aligned with his mentor's values. "You look like you're planning an escape," a warm voice observed. Mason turned to find a woman in a deep blue gown regarding him with amusement. "I'm Sarah Mitchell, and you're Mason Reynolds, tonight's honoree for the Young Philanthropist Award." "Guilty," Mason admitted. "I'm more comfortable under a car than under chandeliers." Sarah's laugh was genuine, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Finally, someone real at one of these events. Come on, I'll introduce you to some people who actually do the work these galas fund." She led him to a group discussing local shelter programs, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Mason found himself drawn into a conversation about technology education for at-risk youth, his discomfort forgotten as he shared his experiences. "See? Not so terrible," Sarah teased later as they escaped to a quieter balcony. "Though I suspect you'd rather be working on your next project. Is it that obvious?" "You light up when you talk about possibilities," she observed. "It's refreshing. Most people here just talk about their achievements." A text message interrupted their conversation. Joey Martinez, Mason's childhood friend. "Everything okay?" Sarah asked, noting his frown. "Just a friend checking in. He's a bit overprotective since." Mason gestured to his shoulder. "The carjacking? I read about that. It's quite a story." Mason changed the subject, uncomfortable with the attention. "Tell me more about your shelter work. It seems like you're really making a difference." Sarah's passion for helping others matched his own drive to create change. They talked until the gala ended, exchanging numbers with a promise to continue their conversation. "Careful with that one," Joey warned the next day over lunch at their favorite diner. "I've heard stories about the Mitchell family." "From your Aunt Rosa? She works for half the families in that neighborhood." "Exactly. And Sarah Mitchell has a reputation. Those charity appearances? All for show." Mason dismissed his friend's concerns. "People can surprise you. Look at James. Everyone thought he was just a mechanic." Their whirlwind romance played out in stolen moments between Mason's growing business commitments and Sarah's charity work. She showed up at his office with coffee during late nights, listened to his ideas with genuine interest, and challenged him to think bigger. The proposal came 6 months later, on a quiet evening at the auto shop where it all began. Mason had asked Lisa's permission to use the space, setting up a simple dinner among the familiar tools and machines. "You're crazy," Sarah said when he knelt, holding out a ring. "We could be at any restaurant in the city, and you bring me here? This is where I learned who I wanted to be," Mason explained. "It's where I learned that success isn't about money or status. It's about building something that matters, with someone who matters." Sarah's yes echoed through the garage, followed by happy tears and endless phone calls to family and friends. Richard Mitchell, Sarah's father, hosted an engagement dinner that turned into an impromptu business discussion. "We could use someone with your vision in the family business," Richard offered. The automotive industry is changing. We need to change with it. I appreciate the offer, sir, but I want to build something of my own. Richard nodded approvingly. Good answer. But let's talk about possible collaborations. Kyle, show Mason the new prototype designs. Kyle Mitchell, Sarah's brother, spread out technical drawings on the dining room table. Dad's right. We need fresh eyes. These are our current safety system designs, but something's missing. The two men bonded over their shared passion for innovation. Kyle's engineering background complemented Mason's practical experience, and they spent hours discussing potential improvements. Finally, someone who speaks car, Kyle joked. Most of Sarah's boyfriends couldn't tell a carburetor from a catalytic converter. Their wedding was a blend of worlds. The Mitchell family's social circle mixing with Mason's auto shop family. Joey served as best man, his speech walking the line between heartfelt and humorous. To the guy who never met a problem he couldn't solve, Joey concluded, raising his glass. And to Sarah, take care of our resident hero. He forgets he's not actually invincible. As they swayed during their first dance, Sarah whispered, "Thank you for making me part of your story." Mason held her closer, James's words echoing in his mind. "Make it count, son." He had no way of knowing that his mentor's final advice would take on a darker meaning in the years to come. Chapter 2. The Web of Deception. 3 years into their marriage, Mason's company had grown beyond his wildest dreams. The office buzzed with energy as engineers and developers worked on next-generation vehicle safety systems. But success came with a price: 60-hour workweeks and constant pressure to innovate. "Mr. Reynolds, the prototype test results are ready," his assistant announced one morning. Mason rubbed his chest, trying to ignore the persistent ache that had bothered him for days. "I'll review them after the investor meeting," he replied, popping an antacid. The pain intensified during his presentation, and he barely made it through. Dr. Anderson's diagnosis was blunt: a minor heart attack. "You're 32, Mr. Reynolds. This is a warning sign you can't ignore. How long until I can return to work?" 2 weeks minimum. "And you need to reduce your stress levels?" The doctor peered at him over reading glasses. "Have you told your wife?" Mason hadn't. Sarah had been distant lately, organizing elaborate parties at their beach house. The last thing she needed was another worry. At home, he found a note: "Charity dinner tonight. Don't wait up." S. The beach house parties had become more frequent, each more lavish than the last. Mason reviewed the credit card statements with growing concern. $50,000 for catering, $30,000 for decorations, $100,000 for a weekend yacht rental. "It's about maintaining the right image," Sarah explained when he finally confronted her. Tears welled in her eyes. "These people can make or break your company's reputation. I'm doing this for us." Her breakdown triggered his protective instincts. "Hey, it's okay. Just maybe we can scale things back a bit." "Of course," she sniffled, curling into his arms. "I just want you to have everything you deserve." In the kitchen, Rosa Martinez scrubbed dishes with unusual vigor, her lips pressed into a tight line. The housekeeper had worked for them since their marriage, recommended by her nephew Joey. "Estás bien?" Mason asked, noticing her distress. "Sí, señor." Rosa's response was clipped. She hesitated, then added, "Be careful with those parties, Mr. Reynolds. Not everyone there is a friend." Before he could probe further, Sarah swept into the kitchen. "Rosa, Brad Cooper confirmed for next weekend. Make sure we have that whiskey he likes." Brad Cooper's return to Detroit had caused quite a stir. The former investment banker had left town 5 years ago after a series of failed ventures. Now he was back, humbled and seeking redemption. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Richard Mitchell declared at a family dinner. "Brad's learned from his mistakes. He's not the same man who left." Kyle shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Dad, maybe we should." "Kyle, enough." Richard's tone brooked no argument. Brad's already helped restructure 2 struggling companies. He has valuable insights. Later that night, Mason overheard Kyle asking unusually specific questions about the security systems at Mason's research facility. "Just professional curiosity," Kyle explained quickly. "You can never be too careful with proprietary technology." 2 weeks later, the facility burned. Fire investigators found evidence of an electrical malfunction, but something felt off about their report. "Insurance will cover everything," Sarah assured him, rubbing his tense shoulders. Maybe this is a sign to take a break. Brad mentioned a great investment opportunity. Mason's instincts, honed by years in the shop, screamed that something wasn't right. He began paying closer attention to the beach house gatherings, noting how Sarah and Brad always seemed to find private moments to talk. "They're planning something," Rosa whispered one night, slipping him a folder. Inside were photographs of his private documents, carefully arranged on Sarah's desk. "She copies everything when you're at work." Before Mason could investigate further, Rosa's son received an unexpected scholarship to study in Europe. "Such a generous opportunity," Sarah commented, "though it would be a shame if anything prevented him from accepting it." The threat was clear. Rosa's subsequent silence spoke volumes. The breach in Mason's carefully constructed world widened. Security footage revealed Kyle accessing restricted areas of the rebuilt facility late at night. Sarah's foundation began making large donations to obscure overseas charities. Brad Cooper became a fixture at Mitchell family gatherings, his redemption story accepted without question. One evening, Mason returned home early to find Sarah deep in conversation with Brad on their back patio. They stood too close, their body language intimate and familiar. "Mason," Sarah's surprise seemed genuine. "You remember Brad? We were just discussing the Foundation's new initiatives." "Fascinating stuff," Brad added smoothly. "Your wife has quite a vision for expanding your philanthropic impact." Mason maintained his composure, years of high-stakes business dealings serving him well. "Don't let me interrupt. I have some work to catch up on." In his home office, he pulled up the Foundation's financial records. The numbers didn't add up. Large sums disappeared into a maze of international transfers and shell companies. A text message lit up his phone. "Joey, we need to talk." Not over the phone. They met at their old high school basketball court, the Detroit skyline glowing in the distance. "Rosa's been keeping records," Joey revealed. "Documents, conversations, security footage. She's scared, man. These people, they're not just stealing from you. They're building something with what they take." Mason thought of James Lloyd's final advice: make it count. He hadn't understood then that sometimes making things count meant fighting to protect what you've built. "I need proof," he told Joey. "Enough to understand exactly what we're dealing with." "Be careful," Joey warned. "Sarah's got people watching you. And Kyle, he's not the friend you think he is." The pieces of the puzzle were there, but Mason couldn't see the full picture. Not yet. He thought of his father, still working to regain his strength. Of James Lloyd's belief in his potential. Of the employees who trusted him with their livelihoods. In the distance, another party ramped up at the beach house. Mason watched the cars arrive, recognizing the players in what he now realized was an elaborate performance. Sarah appeared in his office doorway, stunning in an evening gown. "Sure you won't join us? Brad's bringing some interesting investors." "Maybe later," Mason replied, wondering when his wife's smile had become a stranger's. "I have some calls to make." Chapter 3: The Unraveling. The truth arrived in an unmarked envelope, delivered to Mason's office on a Tuesday morning. Inside, he found surveillance photos and a handwritten note. "I know what they did to my sister. Meet me at Riverside Cafe. Chelsea Wayne." Mason researched Chelsea Wayne before the meeting. Her sister's suicide had made local headlines 5 years ago, another tragic story of depression and financial ruin. But something about the case hadn't sat right with investigators, though they could never prove otherwise. The cafe was nearly empty when he arrived. Chelsea Wayne looked nothing like her social media photos. Her bartender's uniform replaced the glamorous party shots he'd found online. "I serve drinks at your beach house parties," she explained, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "That's how I recognized him. Brad Cooper. He did the same thing to my sister that he's doing to you." She slid a USB drive across the table. "Security footage. Documents. Things your wife wouldn't want public. Brad's not just sleeping with her. They're systematically dismantling everything you've built." Mason's throat tightened. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because my sister deserved justice." Chelsea's knuckles whitened around her mug. "And because they're going to kill me for it." 2 days later, Chelsea's car spun off the road on her way to work. The police called it an accident, brake failure in an otherwise well-maintained vehicle. She survived but remained in a coma, machines breathing for her while Mason watched his world crumble. Something about that crash doesn't add up, Detective Marcus Rodriguez told him unofficially. But without proof. Mason hired Diana Walsh, a former FBI agent turned private investigator. Her reputation for thoroughness had earned her both respect and enemies in Detroit's corporate circles. Your wife's foundation is a shell, Diana reported after 2 weeks of investigation. The real money flows through offshore accounts, funding a rival tech company. They're replicating your patents, modifying them just enough to avoid legal issues. Brad's company? On paper. But Sarah's the majority shareholder through a series of proxy corporations. Diana passed him a thick folder. There's more. Your friend Kyle's been feeding them information for months. Mason thought of Kyle's recent behavior, the odd questions, the late-night facility visits. Why? Revenge. Diana pulled up security footage showing Kyle meeting with Brad. Remember that failed project last year? The one that embarrassed him in front of Richard? Kyle blamed you, even though you covered for his habits. The footage showed Kyle's hands shaking as he passed Brad a flash drive. Even through the grainy video, Mason recognized the signs of withdrawal he'd been trying to ignore in his friend. Kyle's addiction? Mason asked quietly. Diana nodded. Brad's been supplying him, keeping him dependent while using him for information. Your wife knows. She's been managing Kyle's medical expenses through the foundation. The betrayal cut deep, but something still didn't make sense. Sarah doesn't need my money. The Mitchells are wealthy in their own right. This isn't about money. It's about control. Diana played an audio file. Sarah's voice filled the room, discussing Mason with Brad. He thinks success is about helping people, about making things count. We'll show him what really counts in this world. The recordings were everywhere. In Mason's home office, his car, even his private conversations with his father. Sarah had been documenting everything, carefully editing conversations to create a narrative of abuse and criminal behavior. It's her insurance policy, Diana explained. If you ever threatened her plans, these recordings would destroy you. She's got copies stored in multiple locations. Mason drove to the hospital that evening, sitting beside his father's bed as the machines beeped steadily. I should have seen it coming, Dad. His father's stroke-weakened hand gripped his. Your mother. She always said you had too much faith in people. But that's not a weakness, son. It's what makes you different from them. At home, Rosa was waiting in the kitchen. Senor Reynolds, there's something you should know. She told him about the documents, the photos, the whispered conversations she'd overheard. I wanted to tell you sooner, but mi hijo, my son. I understand, Rosa. Mason squeezed her shoulder. You were protecting your family, just like I should have protected mine. In his office, Mason reviewed everything, the security footage, financial records, Diana's reports. Each betrayal stripped away another layer of the life he'd thought he was building. The final piece clicked when he found Sarah's private calendar. The beach house parties weren't just social events. They were strategic gatherings where Sarah and Brad cultivated allies, identified targets, and planned their takeover of Mason's company. His phone buzzed, a text from Kyle. Need to talk. It's about Sarah and Brad. I can't do this anymore. Mason stared at the message, remembering the eager friend who'd shared his dreams of revolutionizing the auto industry. Now Kyle was just another casualty in Sarah's game, another piece she'd sacrificed for her ambitions. The beach house lights blazed in the distance, another party in full swing. Mason could picture them there. Sarah charming potential investors, Brad working the room, Kyle drowning his guilt in expensive whiskey. All while Chelsea Wayne lay in a hospital bed, paying the price for trying to expose their lies. His chest tightened, the reminder of his heart attack, a physical manifestation of the stress they'd placed him under. But Mason Reynolds hadn't survived growing up in Detroit, hadn't fought his way up from nothing by giving up when things got difficult. James Lloyd's letter sat in his desk drawer. Make it count, son. The words took on new meaning now. Making it count wasn't just about success. It was about justice. About protecting others from people like Sarah and Brad. Mason picked up his phone and dialed Diana Walsh's number. I need everything you can find on Brad Cooper's past victims. All of them. What are you planning? Diana asked. Mason watched another luxury car pull up to the beach house. Another potential conspirator arriving for Sarah's performance. I'm going to show them what really counts in this world. The game was changing. Sarah and Brad had spent years weaving their web of deception, but they'd forgotten one crucial detail. Before Mason Reynolds was a successful businessman, he was a mechanic from Detroit. And mechanics knew that even the most complex systems could be taken apart, piece by piece, until nothing remained but the truth. Chapter 4. The Countermove. Mason sat in his office, reviewing Diana Walsh's latest findings. The betrayal still stung, but anger had given way to calculated determination. His computer screen displayed an old military file. Thomas Reeves, former intelligence officer, now running a private security firm in Chicago. Brad Cooper destroyed his career 5 years ago, Diana explained through the speakerphone. Reeves was investigating defense contract fraud when Brad fabricated evidence against him. He lost everything. Can you arrange a meeting? Already did. He's flying in tomorrow. Tom Reeves wasn't what Mason expected. The man who walked into his office moved, but his eyes held a weariness that spoke of battles fought long after leaving the service. I've been tracking Brad Cooper since he ruined my life, Tom said, placing a thumb drive on Mason's desk. You're not his first target, and Sarah's not his first accomplice. They have a pattern. The drive contained detailed files on dozens of victims, business owners, investors, even charities. Each story followed a similar trajectory. Brad would appear as a reformed man seeking redemption, gain trust, then systematically dismantle his target's life. You've built quite a file, Mason observed. Not just me. Tom leaned forward. There's a network of us. People whose lives Brad destroyed. We've been waiting for someone with the resources to bring him down. Mason studied the older man. Why help me? Because you're different. The others, they want revenge. You. Tom gestured at the youth education program certificates on Mason's wall. You want justice. They spent hours reviewing Tom's intelligence network. Former military operators, private investigators, even a few reformed con artists, all connected by their desire to stop Brad Cooper. Your wife's foundation, Tom pointed at financial records. It's laundering money from your company through fake charities. But expose it now, and they'll destroy the evidence. Mason nodded. So, we track the money instead. See where it leads? Their first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria Santos, director of a women's shelter, contacted Mason after recognizing Sarah's name in the foundation's records. She promised us funding last year, Maria explained in her small office. Made a big show of touring the facility, taking photos with our residents. Then denied our application and gave the money to some overseas awareness campaign. Maria pulled out a folder. But that's not why I'm here. One of our residents recognized her. Sarah used to volunteer at another shelter until they caught her stealing donation records. She was using them to find vulnerable women for Brad's investment scams. The evidence mounted. Tom's network identified shell companies, offshore accounts, and a pattern of charitable fraud that spanned multiple states. Mason used the information to track their operations without exposing his knowledge. Detective Marcus Rodriguez proved another valuable ally. The veteran cop had never forgotten Chelsea Wayne's sister. The scene was too perfect, Rodriguez explained, spreading crime scene photos across his desk. Pills, alcohol, a suicide note that read like a Lifetime movie script. But the toxicology report showed inconsistencies. You think Brad killed her? I know he did, but proving it? Rodriguez shook his head. Cooper's smart. He uses people, creates layers between himself and his crimes. Your wife's foundation? Perfect cover for moving money and information. Mason studied the detective's case files. You've been building this case for years, and now we have resources. Rodriguez's eyes gleamed. Your friend Tom's network, my evidence, your inside access. We can finally nail this bastard. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Rosa mentioned her nephew Miguel's connection to Detroit's street racing scene. Mi sobrino, she hesitated. He saw Mr. Cooper at the races last week, making deals with some dangerous people. Miguel Martinez proved more than just a skilled mechanic. His racing network gathered intelligence that law enforcement couldn't access. These guys Brad's dealing with? Miguel explained in his garage. They're not the type who accept excuses for missing payments. And Brad? He's in deep. Mason remembered Sarah's recent request for additional funds. How deep? Millions. Miguel wiped his hands on a rag. He's borrowing from one group to pay another. When it falls apart, he made a collapsing gesture. Tom's team confirmed Miguel's information. Brad had been using the street racing scene to meet creditors, trying to keep his financial house of cards from collapsing. It's a weakness we can exploit, Tom suggested. These creditors won't appreciate learning their money is being used to fund Brad's revenge schemes instead of legitimate investments. Mason spent late nights coordinating with his growing alliance. Tom's network provided surveillance. Rodriguez gathered legal evidence, and Miguel's racing contacts tracked Brad's underground movements. We're not just building a case, Mason explained to Diana. We're creating a net they can't escape. Diana nodded approvingly. And Sarah's foundation? Keep watching, but don't interfere. Let them think they're winning. The pieces were falling into place. Tom's network identified Brad's safety deposit boxes, containing evidence of past crimes. Rodriguez's investigation uncovered links between Sarah's foundation and several unsolved fraud cases. Miguel's contacts reported growing unrest among Brad's creditors. They're getting nervous, Miguel reported. Brad missed another payment. His excuses aren't working anymore. Mason thought of Chelsea Wayne, still lying unconscious in the hospital. Of James Lloyd's final advice to make things count. Of all the lives Brad and Sarah had destroyed in their pursuit of power. Keep watching, he instructed his allies. Let them think they're in control. When we move, we take them all down, permanently. Chapter 5. The Resistance. Sarah noticed the changes first. Her American Express card was declined at Saks Fifth Avenue. A humiliation she wouldn't soon forget. Property deals began falling through without explanation. Offshore accounts reported technical difficulties accessing funds. Something's wrong, she paced in Brad's penthouse office. Mason's too calm. He's planning something. Brad dismissed her concerns, pouring another drink. He's probably focused on that new safety system rollout. Besides, our plans are accelerated now. No time for him to react. Sarah wasn't convinced. The foundation's expenses are being questioned. Donors are getting suspicious. Then create some distractions. Brad's smile held no warmth. A few accidents at his facilities should keep him occupied. The first accident occurred during a prototype testing session. A brake line failure sent a test vehicle into a barrier, injuring 3 engineers. Mason visited them in the hospital, their injuries a stark reminder of what he was fighting against. They knew the risks, Jim Chun, the lead engineer, said from his hospital bed. But sabotage? That's not a risk we signed up for. The injured workers' families joined Mason's cause, providing statements about previous safety incidents that had been covered up. Each piece of evidence strengthened the case against Brad and Sarah. Kyle Mitchell's descent into addiction accelerated. He stumbled into Mason's office one night, pupils dilated, hands shaking. I need money, Kyle slurred. Or maybe I'll tell everyone about your company's little quality control problems. Mason studied his former friend. Kyle, when was the last time you were clean? Don't lecture me. Kyle's anger crumbled into tears. You don't understand. Brad, he helps me forget. Forget how I disappointed everyone. Brad helps you forget by keeping you addicted. Mason pulled out a file. He's been dosing your drinks at parties, making sure you stay dependent. Sarah manages your prescriptions through the foundation. Kyle stared at the evidence. Pharmacy records, surveillance photos, text messages between Brad and Sarah discussing his medication schedule. They wouldn't. Kyle's voice broke. Sarah's my sister. She stopped being your sister the day she chose Brad over family. Mason placed a business card on the desk. This is the best rehabilitation center in Michigan. When you're ready to fight back, call them. The Mitchell family's carefully maintained facade began cracking. Richard Mitchell collapsed during a board meeting after discovering Sarah had been embezzling from family charities. How could you? Patricia Mitchell confronted her daughter in the hospital waiting room. Your father trusted you with those funds. Like you trusted me with your prescription pad? Sarah's voice dripped venom. I know about your little arrangement with that pharmacist, Mother. Does Daddy know his perfect wife has been doctor shopping? Patricia recoiled. I need those medications, and I need them to supply certain associates. Sarah's smile was razor-sharp. "So let's keep our little secrets, shall we?" But Patricia Mitchell had reached her breaking point. She hired a private investigator who uncovered Sarah's drug-dealing operation, stealing prescriptions from her mother and other wealthy women, selling them through the Foundation's healthcare outreach programs. The evidence found its way to Mason through Tom's network. "Patricia Mitchell wants to help," Tom reported. "She's ready to testify about Sarah's drug operation." Brad's desperation showed in his increasingly reckless moves. He ordered more accidents at Mason's facilities, hoping to force a sale. But each incident only strengthened the case against him. "He's getting sloppy," Rodriguez observed, reviewing security footage. "Making mistakes. The kind of mistakes that get people killed." Mason thought of Chelsea Wayne, still unresponsive in her hospital room. "That's what I'm afraid of." Kyle's attempted blackmail backfired when Mason used it to get him into rehab. Tom's team ensured the facility's security, protecting Kyle from both Brad's influence and his own worst impulses. "Your sister and Brad," Mason told Kyle during a rehab visit, "they've been manipulating your addiction, keeping you dependent so you'd help them destroy me." Kyle's hands trembled as he read text messages between Brad and Sarah, discussing which drugs would keep him most compliant. "I trusted them. My own sister. Help me stop them," Mason urged. "Not for revenge, for justice. For all the people they've hurt." The Mitchell family's reputation crumbled as more evidence emerged. Richard's heart attack forced a leadership change at the family company. Patricia's discovery of Sarah's drug-dealing operation shattered her illusions about her daughter. "I enabled her," Patricia confessed to Mason, "made excuses for her behavior. Now look what she's become." Sarah and Brad's desperation grew as their plans unraveled. Property deals collapsed. Creditors demanded payments. The Foundation's donors began asking uncomfortable questions. "We need to accelerate everything," Brad insisted during a late-night meeting. "Sell off Mason's company pieces before he realizes what's happening." But Mason was already 10 steps ahead, his alliance growing stronger each day. Tom's network tracked their moves. Rodriguez gathered evidence. Miguel's racing contacts reported Brad's increasing desperation in the underground racing scene. The storm was gathering, and Sarah and Brad had no idea they were already surrounded. Chapter 6: The Alliance. Chelsea Wayne's hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Mason visited regularly, updating the comatose woman on their progress against Brad. "Your sister would be proud," he told her. "We're close to proving Brad murdered her." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Chelsea's eyes fluttered open during one of Mason's visits. Her first words, barely a whisper, "Brad Cooper killed my sister." Detective Rodriguez recorded her statement. Chelsea revealed that her sister had discovered Brad's connection to a series of real estate scams targeting vulnerable homeowners. She was going to expose him. Chelsea's voice strengthened with each word. The next day, Brad visited her. Hours later, she was dead. The suicide note? Brad forced her to write it while he prepared the drugs. Rodriguez's cold case suddenly turned hot. "This is what we needed: direct testimony linking Brad to a murder." Federal investigators joined the case, revealing they'd been building their own file on Brad's operations. Chelsea's testimony provided the connection they needed to various unsolved crimes. Another ally emerged from Brad's past. Jennifer Cooper, his ex-wife, contacted Mason through Tom's network. They met in a secure location, Jennifer's face bearing scars that told their own story. "Brad didn't want a divorce," she explained, showing Mason old police reports. "When I threatened to expose his schemes, he hired someone to kill me. The attempt failed, but..." She gestured to her scars. "I've been gathering evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment." Jennifer's proof was damning. Recordings, documents, witness statements spanning years of Brad's criminal activities. "He thinks I'm dead," she said. "That's how I've been able to track him without him knowing." Mason's investigation of Sarah's foundation revealed more victims. The foundation had been systematically denying help to legitimate abuse victims while funding fake awareness campaigns. Maria Santos, the women's shelter director, helped Mason contact women Sarah had turned away. Their stories painted a picture of calculated cruelty. She would interview them personally, Maria explained. Get their stories, promise help. then deny them while using their information for her own purposes. Working with Maria, Mason established a legitimate support network for the women Sarah had abandoned. Each testimony strengthened the case against Sarah and Brad. The final piece fell into place when Rose's son returned from his European scholarship. Instead of planting evidence in Mason's office as Sarah had demanded, he had documented everything. "They threatened my mother's job," he explained, sharing videos and recordings. "But Mama raised me better than that. So I played along," gathered proof of their whole operation. The alliance now included victims spanning years of Brad and Sarah's schemes. Tom's coordinated their movements. Rodriguez's police work built the legal case. Maria's shelter network protected vulnerable witnesses. Jennifer's evidence exposed Brad's past crimes. Chelsea's testimony proved his capacity for murder. Mason gathered his allies in a secure location, planning their next moves. The room held an unlikely mix: a detective, a military intelligence officer, a street racer, abuse survivors, and others whose lives Brad and Sarah had touched. "We're not just building a case," Mason addressed the group. "We're building a movement, a way to protect others from people like them." Tom outlined their intelligence gathering. Brad's creditors are ready to turn on him. His underground contacts are getting nervous. "The DA's office is prepared to move on our evidence," Rodriguez added. "Multiple jurisdictions, multiple charges." Maria reported on the support network they'd built. "Women are coming forward daily. Sarah's foundation can't hide its true nature anymore." Miguel's racing contacts provided updates on Brad's deteriorating position in the underground scene. "He's running out of places to hide." The alliance had become more than a group seeking justice. It was a family forged in shared purpose. Each member brought unique skills and perspectives to their cause. Chelsea, now recovered, worked with Rodriguez to strengthen the murder case against Brad. Jennifer's knowledge of Brad's methods helped them anticipate his moves. Maria's shelter network protected witnesses from retaliation. Mason looked at his unlikely family, people from different worlds united against a common enemy. Tom's military expertise, Rodriguez's dedication to justice, Maria's compassion for victims, Miguel's street smarts, Chelsea's determination, Jennifer's resilience. They weren't just fighting Brad and Sarah anymore. They were fighting for everyone who had ever been betrayed, manipulated, or abandoned by those they trusted. The alliance was ready. The storm they had gathered would soon break over Brad and Sarah's carefully constructed world, washing away the lies and leaving only truth in its wake. Chapter 7: The Trap. The Mitchell Family Foundation's annual gala buzzed with Detroit's elite. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the grand ballroom of the Renaissance Center as Sarah Mitchell Reynolds commanded attention from the main stage. "Your generosity tonight will transform lives," Sarah declared, her gown catching the light. Behind her, Brad Cooper nodded approvingly, playing his role as the reformed businessman perfectly. In the control room, Tom Reeves checked his watch. "All teams in position? Miguel's crews have the perimeter secured," Mason confirmed through his earpiece. "Rodriguez's units are staged nearby. Time to start the show." Tom's team had spent weeks preparing the gala's audiovisual system. Hidden cameras tracked Sarah and Brad's movements while a sophisticated program waited to broadcast carefully selected recordings. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah continued, "I'm honored to announce our foundation's new initiative." The massive screens behind her flickered. Sarah's voice filled the room, but not from the stage. "These idiots will believe anything. Just keep smiling and taking their money." Brad's voice joined hers. "The best part? They think we're helping people. Meanwhile, we're building an empire on their donations." Sarah froze mid-speech as more recordings played. Her carefully edited conversations with Mason were replaced by the unaltered versions, revealing her true nature to the assembled crowd. "Security!" Brad shouted, moving toward the exit. But Miguel's street racing crew had already positioned their vehicles, blocking escape routes tuned machines that made Brad's underground associates nervous. Chelsea Wayne stepped into the spotlight, supported by Jennifer Cooper. The scars on Jennifer's face stood out under the harsh lights as she pointed at Brad. "Tell them how you murdered my sister," Chelsea demanded. "Tell them how you forced her to write that suicide note." Brad reached for his phone, presumably to call his underground contacts for help. The look on his face when he saw Miguel's crews mixed with his creditors told Mason everything he needed to know. Detective Rodriguez chose that moment to enter with his team. "Bradley Cooper," he announced, his voice carrying through the stunned silence. "You're under arrest for the murder of Lisa Wayne." More officers appeared, each carrying warrants for different charges. Tom's network had coordinated with multiple jurisdictions, ensuring no legal escape routes remained. "You can't prove anything," Brad snarled as Rodriguez approached with handcuffs. "Your former associates disagree." Rodriguez nodded towards several of Brad's street racing contacts, now speaking with federal agents. Amazing how cooperative people become when faced with their own criminal charges. Sarah attempted to maintain control. "This is ridiculous. I have evidence of Mason's criminal activities." The screens changed again, showing Sarah coaching Kyle during his addiction, manipulating him into betraying Mason. "Just take these pills," her recorded voice instructed. "They'll help you focus on what needs to be done." Patricia Mitchell stood up from her table. "Those are my prescription medications. The ones you've been stealing and selling." More revelations followed. Tom's team had choreographed each disclosure to build upon the last, creating an inescapable web of evidence. The Foundation's fraudulent activities, the sabotaged research facility, Chelsea's attempted murder. Mason watched from the control room as Sarah's mask crumbled. The society darling disappeared, replaced by the calculating manipulator he'd discovered too late. "Mason," she spotted him emerging from the control room. "You don't understand. Everything I did was for us." "No," Mason cut her off. "Everything you did was for yourself. The Foundation, the parties, the lies. It was all about power." Rodriguez's officers moved through the crowd, collecting statements from shell-shocked donors. The women Sarah had turned away from shelters arrived with Maria Santos, their testimonies adding to the growing evidence. Brad's underground creditors, seeing federal agents everywhere, began making deals to save themselves. Each revelation triggered another, the cascade of evidence becoming an avalanche. Mr. Reynolds, a federal agent, approached Mason. "We'll need statements from all your employees regarding the facility accidents." "They're ready to talk," Mason assured him. "All of them." The gala dissolved into controlled chaos. Law enforcement officials escorted Brad and Sarah to separate vehicles while news crews arrived, drawn by anonymous tips. In the parking garage, Miguel's racing crews maintained their blockade. The sight of their modified vehicles, combined with the presence of Brad's angry creditors, ensured no underground rescue attempt would succeed. Tom coordinated the evidence collection from his command center. Federal agents are securing Brad's safety deposit boxes now. Jennifer's evidence is being processed. Chelsea's testimony is already on record. Mason watched Sarah being led away, remembering their first meeting at another gala years ago. Her honeyed voice, her passionate speeches about helping others, all part of an elaborate performance. "The Foundation's records?" he asked Tom. "Being seized as we speak. Your wife's creative accounting is about to become very public." The trap had sprung perfectly, each element building upon the others. Brad's criminal past merged with Sarah's financial fraud. Kyle's manipulation connected to the Foundation's drug dealing. Chelsea's attempted murder linked to Brad's pattern of violence. Detective Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile as he closed the car door on Brad. 5 years I've waited to make this arrest. Your sister can rest easier now, Chelsea." The night ended with Sarah and Brad in custody, their carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. But Mason knew this was only the beginning. The real fallout would come with the dawn. Chapter 8: The Fall. Sarah Mitchell Reynolds' fall from grace played out across social media platforms she had once manipulated so skillfully. The women she had turned away from her foundation came forward in waves, each story more damning than the last. She interviewed me personally, one woman testified before news cameras. Made me relive my abuse in detail. Then denied help and used my story to raise money she spent on parties. Maria Santos organized the testimonies, ensuring each victim's voice was heard. Sarah's foundation claimed to help abuse survivors. Instead, she used their pain to build her social status. The foundation's financial records revealed the full scope of Sarah's deception. Donations meant for shelters had funded private jets and luxury goods. Grants earmarked for victim support disappeared into offshore accounts. The numbers tell the story, Tom explained to federal investigators. Each fraudulent transaction links to specific events where Sarah and Brad recruited new victims or laundered proceeds from their schemes. Kyle Mitchell, fresh from rehabilitation, chose to confess publicly. He stood before reporters, 30 days sober and ready to face consequences. My sister and Brad Cooper exploited my addiction, he admitted. They used drugs to control me, to make me betray people who tried to help me. I'm here to make amends and help prosecute them both. The Mitchell family gathered at Richard's hospital room, watching Kyle's confession on television. Patricia held her husband's hand as their son detailed years of manipulation. We should have seen it, Richard said quietly. All those signs we ignored about Sarah. We saw what she wanted us to see, Patricia replied. But now we see the truth. Brad's criminal empire collapsed spectacularly. His underground creditors, facing their own legal troubles, raced to make deals with prosecutors. Each revelation exposed more crimes, more victims, more schemes. Cooper's legal team quit this morning, Rodriguez reported to Mason. Seems they discovered he was paying them with stolen funds. They're cooperating with our investigation now. The beach house parties, once symbols of Sarah's social influence, became evidence of her crimes. Staff members had recorded hundreds of hours of conversations, capturing Sarah, Brad, and their conspirators mocking victims and planning schemes. Mason reviewed the footage with his team. Release the relevant clips to media outlets, he instructed. The public needs to see their true characters. The videos spread rapidly. Sarah and Brad lounging by the pool, laughing about families they destroyed. Strategy sessions for manipulating Kyle's addiction. Plans for sabotaging Mason's company. Sarah's social media empire proved equally hollow. Investigation revealed paid influencers managing her accounts, creating a fictional persona of philanthropic dedication. None of it was real, Jennifer Cooper explained to prosecutors. The charity work, the social consciousness. It was all carefully staged for maximum effect. Kyle's public confession sparked the Mitchell family's slow journey toward healing. Richard stepped down from the family company, focusing on recovery and reconciliation with his son. The company needs new leadership, he announced. Someone who remembers what the Mitchell name once stood for. Patricia Mitchell emerged stronger from the scandal. She entered treatment for her prescription drug dependency and began working with addiction support groups. Sarah exploited my weakness, she told fellow recovery patients. But she also showed me I needed help. Sometimes truth comes from unexpected places. Brad's criminal connections abandoned him completely. Evidence emerged linking him to dozens of scams across multiple states. Former associates rushed to distance themselves, providing authorities with years of incriminating documents. It's like watching dominoes fall, Tom observed. Each betrayal exposes 3 more schemes, and those lead to more victims and conspirators. The beach house staff's recordings proved particularly damaging. Hours of footage showed Sarah and Brad's true nature, calculating, cruel, amused by others' suffering. Release that clip of them mocking the domestic violence survivors, Mason instructed his media team. People need to understand exactly who they were supporting. The fallout reached beyond Detroit. Sarah's foundation had connections to charities nationwide, each requiring investigation. Other organizations rushed to distance themselves, auditing donations and severing ties. The foundation's collapse is triggering reviews throughout the nonprofit sector, Diana reported. Sarah's schemes damaged public trust in legitimate charities. Kyle's recovery became part of the Mitchell family's redemption story. His honest acknowledgement of addiction and betrayal resonated with other victims of manipulation. Brad and Sarah didn't just steal money, he explained in therapy sessions. They stole trust, dignity, hope. Those are harder to repay. The evidence mounted daily. Financial fraud, drug trafficking, attempted murder, each charge supported by documents, recordings, witnesses. Brad's own legal team provided the final blow, turning over files showing years of criminal conspiracy. Their ethical awakening conveniently coincided with federal investigations into legal malpractice. Your Honor, Brad's former attorney addressed the court. We wish to amend our previous statements regarding Mr. Cooper's activities. Chapter 9. The Justice. Mason channeled his resources into creating the Reynolds Foundation for victims of white-collar crime. Chelsea Wayne, fully recovered and determined to prevent others from suffering her sister's fate, became its first director. We're not just offering financial support, Chelsea explained during the foundation's launch. We're creating a network to identify and stop predators like Brad Cooper before they destroy lives. The foundation's first case? Helping families Brad had ruined over the years. Jennifer Cooper helped identify victims across multiple states, each story contributing to the growing case against her ex-husband. Your sister would be proud, Mason told Chelsea as they reviewed assistance applications. She tried to expose Brad alone. Now we're building a system to support others who speak up. Sarah's final desperate move came during her pre-trial hearing. I'll expose everything, she threatened through her new lawyers. All of Mason's business secrets, his technological innovations. Mason's response caught her off guard. At a press conference, he announced plans to share his company's safety innovations through open-source technology platforms. Innovation should serve everyone, he declared. These safety systems will be freely available to any manufacturer committed to protecting lives. Sarah's leverage evaporated. The technology she had stolen and hoped to exploit became public resources, transforming the automotive industry in ways she hadn't anticipated. Brad's attempt to flee justice became his final humiliation. His private plane, piloted by one of Miguel's racing contacts, diverted to a secondary airfield where federal agents waited. You really thought I wouldn't have escape routes planned? Jennifer mocked her ex-husband as agents led him away. I've been tracking your backup plans for years. The beach house underwent its own transformation. Mason converted the symbol of Sarah's excess into a recovery center for addiction and trauma survivors. This place hosted parties where they planned to destroy lives, Kyle told the center's first residents. Now it's where lives are rebuilt. Rosa's son established a scholarship program at the center, specifically designed to help others resist manipulation tactics. They tried to use education to control me, he explained to potential recipients. We're using it to set people free. Mason's evolution from victim to protector manifested in new technologies. His company developed systems to detect fraud patterns, protect vulnerable individuals from exploitation, and support investigation of white-collar crimes. The machine from Detroit, Tom joked during a strategy session, became a guardian against predators. At the transformed beach house, Mason hosted a quiet dinner for his unlikely family. Chelsea discussed the foundation's progress. Rodriguez shared updates on cold cases they'd helped solve. Tom described how his intelligence network now served public good. To justice, Kyle raised his glass of sparkling water, marking 6 months of sobriety. And to the family we found through adversity, Rosa and Miguel sat among them, their loyalty honored with places at Mason's table. Each person represented a different aspect of the victory over Brad and Sarah's schemes. In the background, a news report detailed the aftermath. Sarah's foundation funds redistributed to legitimate charities. Brad's multiple life sentences. The Mitchell family's rebuilding under Patricia's guidance. Mason's company stock reached new heights as their latest safety system, dedicated to James Lloyd's memory, received international acclaim. The final act of justice came full circle at his father's grave. Mason placed his old Rolex, the one Sarah had given to Brad as a sign of their conspiracy, beside the headstone. You were right, Dad, he said quietly. Success isn't about money. It's about making things count. The watch's gold surface reflected sunlight, transformed from a symbol of betrayal into a marker of lessons learned. The man who placed it there had been transformed too, from a victim of deception into a protector of others. The machine from Detroit had evolved into something more, a guardian against those who would prey on trust and love. And in that evolution, Mason Reynolds had finally fulfilled James Lloyd's last request. He had made it count. Epilogue. 10 years later. Mason Reynolds adjusted his tie as he prepared to address the graduating class of Detroit Technical Institute. The auditorium buzzed with excitement. not just because of graduation day, but because of the announcement they'd all been waiting for. The Reynolds Foundation's Technological Innovation Grant recipients have transformed our understanding of automotive safety, Dean Williams introduced him. And today, the man behind it all has an announcement that will change more lives. Mason approached the podium, James Lloyd's old laptop tucked under his arm. He'd kept it all these years, a reminder of where everything began. 10 years ago, he began, I learned that success isn't measured by what you gain, but by what you give back. Today, the Reynolds Foundation is launching the James Lloyd Programming Initiative, providing full scholarships to 1,000 students from underprivileged backgrounds. In the audience, his father beamed with pride. The stroke's effects were still visible, but years of therapy had restored much of his mobility. Beside him sat Rosa Martinez, now the Foundation's Director of Community Outreach, and her son Miguel, who had transformed the street racing scene into a legitimate automotive testing network. The Reynolds Technology Center occupied the renovated Lloyd's Auto Repair Building. Lisa Lloyd ran the business side, honoring her father's legacy while embracing innovation. The original garage area now housed a state-of-the-art training facility where experienced mechanics taught alongside software engineers. My mentor, James Lloyd, believed in combining practical experience with technological innovation, Mason continued. Today, that vision has created opportunities for thousands. The center's success had sparked similar programs nationwide. Tom Reeves, who now headed the Foundation's security division, had helped establish a network of facilities identifying and preventing white-collar crime before it destroyed lives. We don't just teach technology, Mason explained. We teach responsibility, ethics, the importance of using knowledge to protect others. Chelsea Wayne, watching from backstage, smiled at those words. As executive director of the Reynolds Foundation, she transformed her own tragedy into a force for positive change. The Foundation's Victim Support Network had become a model for organizations worldwide. After the ceremony, Mason hosted a private gathering at the transformed beach house, now the Reynolds Recovery Center. Kyle Mitchell, celebrating 8 years of sobriety, greeted him with a warm embrace. The new rehabilitation wing opens next month, Kyle reported. He'd earned his counseling certification and now helped others overcome addiction. We're already fully booked. Detective Rodriguez, recently promoted to police commissioner, arrived with Jennifer Cooper. Their unlikely romance had blossomed during the years of investigating cold cases linked to Brad's schemes. Jennifer's network of survivors had evolved into a powerful advocacy group. Remember when this place hosted those corrupt parties? Jennifer mused, looking around the center's peaceful grounds. Now it saves lives. Speaking of saving lives, Rodriguez added, the Foundation's crime prevention software flagged another potential scam artist last week. Tom's team is already working with authorities. The technology Mason had developed hadn't just transformed automotive safety. It had evolved into sophisticated systems protecting vulnerable people from exploitation. The open-source initiative he'd launched to counter Sarah's threats had sparked a revolution in protective innovations. Patricia Mitchell joined them, accompanied by Richard. The Mitchell family had rebuilt itself after Sarah's betrayal. Patricia's recovery journey had inspired her to establish support programs for prescription drug dependency. The Mitchell Family Trust is funding 3 new recovery centers, she announced. Using the Reynolds Foundation model, Richard, though retired, had found purpose in mentoring young entrepreneurs. Teaching them what to watch for, he explained. The signs I missed with Brad and Sarah. News of the imprisoned couple surfaced occasionally. Brad's multiple life sentences ensured he would never harm anyone again. Sarah, serving 30 years for her crimes, had attempted to publish a memoir, but the Foundation's legal team had blocked it to protect her victims. Any word from the appeals court? Mason asked Rodriguez. Denied again. They're both staying exactly where they belong. Maria Santos arrived with updates about the Foundation's shelter network. Under her leadership, the network had expanded to protect not just abuse survivors, but anyone vulnerable to financial predators. We just opened the 15th satellite center, she reported proudly. The prevention programs are showing remarkable success rates. The gathering moved inside as evening approached. The center's main hall, once the scene of Sarah's manipulative parties, now displayed success stories, photographs, and testimonials from people who'd rebuilt their lives there. Joey Martinez, who'd parlayed his protective instincts into a successful security consulting firm, studied a newer addition to the wall, a tribute to James Lloyd. "He would have loved seeing this," Joey remarked. "Everything growing from that little auto shop." Mason nodded, remembering those early programming lessons in the shop's office. He saw potential everywhere. In people, in technology, in second chances. Diana Walsh joined them, having retired from private investigation to lead the Foundation's investigative training program. Speaking of second chances, our latest graduate class includes 3 former scam artists. They're using their experience to help prevent others from following that path. The conversation turned to the Foundation's latest initiatives. Tom's security network had expanded globally, working with law enforcement agencies to identify and prevent exploitation. Chelsea's victim support programs had become a model for organizations worldwide. The pattern recognition software caught another pyramid scheme last month, Tom reported, before they could recruit any victims. The algorithms are getting better at spotting potential predators. Mason's original company had evolved too. The safety systems developed in those early days had become industry standards, saving countless lives. But it was the protective technologies, the ones designed to shield vulnerable people from exploitation, that truly fulfilled James Lloyd's final advice. Rose's nephew Miguel had transformed his street racing connections into a legitimate automotive testing network. "We're testing the new safety features next week," he announced. The results look promising. Kyle shared updates about his counseling work. Many of his patients were former victims of manipulation, dealing with trauma similar to what he'd experienced. "Understanding the manipulation tactics helps them heal," he explained, knowing they're not alone, that others survived similar experiences. Jennifer and Rodriguez discussed their ongoing work with cold cases. Brad's schemes had left a trail of victims across decades, and the Foundation's resources helped bring closure to old wounds. "Each case we solve prevents future victims," Jennifer explained. "People learn to recognize the warning signs." Patricia and Richard Mitchell had found peace in their new roles. The Mitchell family name, once tainted by Sarah's crimes, now stood for recovery and redemption. "The scholarship program has already helped 50 students," Richard reported, all from families affected by white-collar crime. As night fell, Mason wandered to his old office. The space had been converted into a memorial room, displaying artifacts from the Foundation's journey. James Lloyd's letter held a place of honor. "Make it count, son." Those 4 words had guided everything. The Foundation's work, the technology innovations, the lives saved and rebuilt. All of it counted in ways James might never have imagined. Mason's phone buzzed, a message from Lisa Lloyd about the auto shop's latest training program. The original garage where he'd learned to solve problems now taught others to do the same, combining mechanical skill with technological innovation. The Reynolds Foundation had grown beyond his wildest dreams. What started as a response to betrayal had evolved into a force for positive change, touching lives across generations. Chelsea joined him in the memorial room. "The new Victim Support Center opens next month," she reported. "We're naming it after my sister." Mason nodded. Lisa Wayne's tragic death had sparked a movement that now protected countless others from similar fates. Her story, like James Lloyd's, reminded them why their work mattered. The Foundation's impact rippled outward. Tom's security network had prevented dozens of large-scale fraud attempts. Maria's shelter system protected vulnerable people before they could be exploited. Kyle's counseling programs helped survivors rebuild their lives. Miguel's testing network had revolutionized automotive safety standards. Joey's security firm trained corporations to protect themselves from internal theft and fraud. Diana's investigative programs helped law enforcement agencies stop white-collar crime before it destroyed lives. The beach house's transformation symbolized everything they'd accomplished. Where Sarah and Brad once plotted to destroy lives, people now found healing and hope. Rodriguez and Jennifer had married last spring, their ceremony held in the center's garden. Their combined experience, law enforcement, and survivor advocacy strengthened the Foundation's protective mission. Patricia's recovery journey inspired others struggling with addiction. Richard's mentoring helped young entrepreneurs avoid the pitfalls he'd missed with Brad and Sarah. The Mitchell family's redemption story proved that healing was possible, even from the deepest betrayals. Rose's promotion to Director of Community Outreach acknowledged her crucial role in exposing the truth. Her son's scholarship program helped others resist the manipulation tactics he'd witnessed. The Foundation's legal team maintained vigilance, ensuring Brad and Sarah's continued imprisonment while protecting victims' rights. Their stories served as warnings, teaching others to recognize and resist similar schemes. Mason's original company continued innovating, but profit had become secondary to protection. The open-source initiatives he'd launched had transformed multiple industries, making safety and security accessible to all. The James Lloyd Programming Initiative would extend that legacy, teaching new generations to use technology for good. Each scholarship recipient learned not just coding, but ethics and responsibility. Looking around the memorial room, Mason reflected on the decade's journey. The betrayals that could have destroyed him had instead sparked a movement dedicated to protecting others. The machine from Detroit had become something more, a guardian, a teacher, a force for positive change. James Lloyd's final advice had guided the transformation. Make it count. And they had. In lives saved, in people protected, in futures secured, everything counted. The Foundation's work would continue, growing and adapting to meet new challenges. The betrayals that began their story had been transformed into tools for prevention and healing. Sarah and Brad's schemes had failed, but their exposure had created something lasting and good. Mason left the memorial room, rejoining the gathering of people who'd become his true family. Each represented a different aspect of their shared mission: protection, healing, justice, innovation. Together, they'd built something that transcended revenge or justice. They'd created a legacy of protection and positive change, ensuring that future generations would be better equipped to resist manipulation and exploitation. The Reynolds Foundation stood as proof that even the darkest betrayals could lead to light, if you chose to make it count. In the distance, Detroit's lights sparkled, reminding Mason of those late nights at Lloyd's Auto Repair, learning to code while rebuilding engines. James Lloyd had seen potential in a young mechanic. Now that mechanic helped others see potential in themselves. The epilogue to their story wasn't about victory over Sarah and Brad. It was about the lives touched, the people protected, the positive changes that rippled outward through generations. They had made it count, not just for themselves, but for everyone their work would ever protect or heal. And in that achievement, they had discovered the truest measure of success. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.